real quick through the reading log because there were some questions during the PD about the reading log itself and what that kind of looked like. So what I have my kids do is while they're reading, they fill out, this should all be the same, name, date, the basic thing, what they're reading, who wrote it, and then like how much time we read, usually 15, 20, 30 minutes depending. And then what pages they read. So I can start also tracking to ensure that they're reading in time. Like if we've read for 30 minutes and they've read 2 pages, either the book's too hard or they weren't actually reading during that time. Then the vocabulary part specifically that we talked about. 5 words they came across they did not understand. So they write the word down. And then after the reading, they fill out, look up the definition. I tell them to use Oxford because that's going to be the most educated vocabulary terms. What I have them do is they put the word, the page number. And then I have the example here. I put the text in there because I was showing them how the word can be different. The meaning of the word can be different, so they have to look at the context. So the 2 different meanings of the word languor. Right, so looking at it in context of the text, then the definition oppressive stillness in the air. So they can start thinking about that. And then if they're like, oh, I don't know what oppressive means, then look that up too.
That's our next word. Yep.
Yeah. So, and then moving on, like when you're talking about the like purposeful reading, so we're talking about socio-political issues specifically right now in regards to, so this can always change based on whatever you're doing. And I gave them examples of socio-political. LGBTQ, immigration, racism, anti-feminism, blah, 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 blah. Right? 3 questions. I say 3, but realistically, if they only read 10 pages, they may only have 1.
Yeah, right.
So 1, 2, 3, depending on how much they're reading. If they're at home reading for the weekend, they may have multiple ones. And then they write a 5 to 6 sentence summary of what they read. What happened, like major characters, point of view stuff, major events, and how the events contributed to the overall plot. Just kind of a quick summary of what they were reading so we can keep track of it.
Amazing.
Any questions on that?
Could you do digitally?
Digital, I think we could. The thing we struggle with the digital right now is the kids and their Chromebooks.
Yeah.
So kind of teaching them how to do that, but that would be an easier way, and that way it's much paper. Right, in a perfect world. And that could be something that's when you're doing the Google Classroom that we have, that could be a quiz or like fill in like, okay, here's what came up.
Yeah.
The only thing is like if they're tracking the words, then what I want them to do, because I don't want them actually doing any of this until they're done with their reading time.
Okay.
Because it gets distracting to go between reading and looking up the definitions. So that's why I have them track it. So they have an index card, sticky notes, because most of them borrow sticky notes and start annotating things in there anyway. So just marking what the word was. Because if they wait till the end to write the words down, they forget what words.
So do you give them time to do this at the end of their reading time in class?
Yeah, so they get 10 minutes to read and then 5 to 10 minutes to do this.
Okay.
Or whatever the time looks like. This part, 5 to 10 minutes, because it really shouldn't take that long to do. Especially now, a lot of times we don't even do the questions since they've already developed their thing, but I do want them, like, how does this continue to contribute, and maybe making statements instead of questions.
Cool.
Yep. All right. So looking into what you're specifically doing, because you do a lot of EOC stuff. You meet one-on-one with juniors, sophomores and juniors.
Some seniors.
And some seniors, right, who really need to do this. And their biggest struggle, honestly, is the language, is the academic vocabulary. So they, especially the seniors, if they don't pass it, they don't get to graduate, right? I've had kids, I had 3 seniors last year. We had to have a special graduation committee meet to decide, like we had to do a separate assignment for them that they had to complete in lieu of the exam. And then we had to sit down and say, okay, if they pass this, can they still graduate? This in lieu of the exam thing. It's a huge thing because it has to go through the state of Texas. It's not just, oh, look, you can't pass the test, write this paper. Like we actually, when we created the paper, it had to fall in line with the standards of what they had to, like the EOC2 was a persuasive essay. So they had to write a research persuasive essay that went in line with what they were doing in my class, but was separate. So it was 2 separate papers they were writing at that time then. And then it still looked at the EOC rubric, making sure they passed, and then we still had to meet as a committee. So it's a huge thing, so trying to get them to, and it's not just, oh, look, let's take this test, here's how you can pass it. We want to make sure that they understand as much as possible, so when they graduate and go to college or go join the workforce or even the military, whatever they're doing, they can sit and read whatever it is they have to read. And the ones who join the workforce, there's reading involved. Okay, so It is really, really pivotal. And I have seen you doing some of your interventions, which looked a lot like, okay, this is what you need to do, fill in these blanks. And I know that was only 1 or 2 of those that I kind of was able to watch. And that was closer to the beginning of everything.
Yeah.
So I do want to pop in more
Mm-hmm.
as I can during my off periods or whatever to see kind of what it's looking like now. But I like this fiction, Red Badge of Courage. So you can still do close reading. Look specifically, at the questions, what those questions are asking, and think about like maybe some of the vocabulary. I know you don't have
That would be kind of weird. But
yeah, that's okay. So here's the question. So
Yeah.
look at, definitely number 2, right? Because that's a vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Number 2 and number 3.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't actually give them the thing, but how can you help them with that word annihilated? Because you can't give them the definition in this case.
Yeah, I mean, they can look it up in the dictionary, but they also need to look at it in context.
Right.
So you go back and you find it in the text and,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Because even for this one, like which definition best fits, like that's kind
Mhm.
of, they're doing the same thing, because they have a dictionary with them, they can use it.
Right,
But
okay.
they still won't know what
So
it is.
that kind of
unless
goes
they
back
look.
into what I have my sophomores
Yeah.
doing is look at the context of it when you have
Which one?
multiple.
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
so if you look through, I like your reading strategies there, right? Okay. Underline the keywords and answer choices, yeah. And then the
labeling
tone words, checking tone words is good. So if you wanted to just have them read through this passage, what are some of the words that would jump out to you, like vocabulary words that you would want to pre-teach maybe?
Definitely annihilated, just since that's something that they're going to be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple that they already have like
That's given to them?
numbered,
Yeah.
given down here. So we would still look at those just to figure out.
Yeah, and that's a good idea, is like even if it's here,
Yeah.
right, they don't always know to look down here to the bottom. So I would still pre-teach those
Mhm.
words, right? So where's the first one? All right, well, I found logs here.
Box and the other one.
That's
I
what I
just
do
have
above
it right here, cartridge.
Right here, cartridge, okay. So, it's also key because it doesn't say like cartridge, a paper covered load of gunpowder,
Yeah.
right?
So they need to know to match the footnotes.
Yeah, so you can literally like just pre-teach the word cartridge
Mhm.
to them. Same with lock, which some of them are probably already going to be familiar with it in the context. If they have ever been shooting,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
they know what the lock is, but kind of like that reminder. But it is a good idea to at least still pre-teach it and then show them in the footnotes when you're showing them. See where it says the 1?
That means that.
It's here already. It's going to give you the definition. But what does that actually mean when you look at it?
Mm-hmm.
Does this make sense to you? Because this is old, right?
Yeah, and there's still stuff in here, like they might have to look up gunpowder, they might have
Right.
to look up like barrel of a rifle, right?
Right, and that's the big thing is
So-
because this is older, it's not like they might think cartridge now and think like the,
Ink.
well, no, even in a gun,
Oh.
it's a thing of ammo.
Yeah.
It's literally like one thing that they just put the bullets in and shove it in the
Yeah.
gun and go. So that's just making sure they understand the context and the time frame that was
Mhm.
written. Any other words that aren't in here?
I was even thinking like handkerchief, like, because I don't
yeah.
know that that's a common word.
Mm-hmm.
There was another one that I did in a park.
Let's see, exquisite.
Yeah.
I mean, and you don't have to do every word. With
Right.
exquisite, they could probably figure out through context what that meant. And then even if, let's say, if it's a word, like they've already read that part of it and you only cover 2 to 3 words per time,
Mhm.
you can still always go back to it. So like the next day when you meet with them. Okay, so yesterday we talked about handkerchief, but today we're going to talk about exquisite. Let's go back to the story, to that part in the story it is, and what does that mean? So
Mhm.
if they put this in, what does that actually mean? What is he saying here?
Mhm.
By saying exquisite attention.
Mhm.
So now we know what exquisite means. What is the author
What
really
does it mean
saying
in
here?
context? Yeah.
Yeah. So like I do that a lot actually. Go back to the word.
Mm-hmm.
It helps them see it and then have them use it multiple times. Let's see.
And the other, I think the ones that they're talking about are in this section.
Yeah, 15 was annihilated. Ooh, amputated.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably like they might have an idea.
Perspiration.
Perspiration. There's a lot of big words in here.
Yeah.
Where I mean, and you can show them context with perspiration. Perspiration streamed down the youth's face.
Mm-hmm.
So what is something that would stream down their face, right? Soil like that of a weeping dirty child. So it's also really dirty. So it's just kind of teaching
Yeah.
them how to use those context clues.
and
Now at the end of the day, they don't really need it, but if they've got to do a summary or talk about
Yeah.
the author's tone,
Mm-hmm.
the more the words they can pick up. If they know perspiration is something gross,
Mm-hmm.
then they're going to pick up that's probably pretty negative,
Mhm.
right? So even if they don't have to know the words or have to read through the whole thing, they still do have to pick out those tone words. And so the more vocabulary they have access to, the better. Blistering. I like that one. Because this is blistering sweat. That's a weird combination, right? You
Yeah.
think blister and you're like,
Yeah.
a blister, right? So what was the blistering sweat be? Comrades, consciousness. Yeah, there's a lot of really big words in this one. Triumphant. And sometimes I look at words too that I think they know, but then I'm like, do they actually
Right.
know it? And then think
Like,
about
could
that
they
too.
define it?
And sometimes what you can do is you pick a few words to introduce to them, but then also have them go through and start to write down a couple words and teach each other. Right here, you pick a couple words you think nobody else knows or that you're struggling with. You're going to look it up. Like this group, you group right here, 3 words. You can give them the 3 words too if you want. They're here, here, and here to make sure they're not all doing the same word somehow. So you guys look up these 3 words and you're going to teach them to the class. Because then if they have to teach it, they'll actually, 1, they'll pay attention more.
Yeah.
2, they'll actually retain it better.
Yeah.
So, cool. Any questions?
I don't think so. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about vocabulary, and it seems like it's like, oh, we should be doing more of this, but we get caught up and we're like, they know the words. We get caught up in the idea that they already know it, or we think they know it, so we're not going to teach them. And we realize, maybe we should be teaching
They're in
them
12th
this.
grade and they don't know what exquisite means.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So just kind of making sure we pick up those gaps, because like we talked about the Matthew effect. And the Matthew effect's even bigger for a lot of our kids because they didn't get the early education
Yeah.
that their peers did.
Yeah.
So we already have the gap there, and then it's made so much bigger for them. Okay,
Amazing.
cool.